Hi, everybody. Happy Friday. Larissa here from Beekeeping Made Simple, and I'm gonna talk about buying bees. I have not, there we go. Better. I have not put in my order for buying bees yet, but I got a few messages from people in my bee club about selling bees. So I wanted to talk about buying bees, selling bees, what to look for, what you want, what you don't want, or what I don't want. And then I'm happy to answer questions you guys have and talk about some other bee things. Putting together equipment. I have two hives that I haven't put together yet, and they both came with the hardware. But funny, the one came with screws for the boxes, and the other one came with nails, which I found interesting. So I'm curious to hear what you guys like to use for putting your boxes together. And the one that is beeswax coated actually came just with nails for the frames and came with nothing and didn't even say anything about using nails or screws to put the boxes together, which I thought was interesting because if it came with nails for 30 frames, it would come with nails for the boxes unless they think it's not necessary because it's beeswax coated. I don't know. Oh, we have someone here from Ukraine. Well, what time is it there? I have my grandmother's Ukrainian necklace on. Anybody else that wants to put in the chat where you're from? It's great to see where everyone is tuning in from, and kind of helps people, talk amongst each other. You can put in the chat, you have questions, you want to answer them with your location. That's great. If you are having trouble putting something into the chat, I just want to let you know that that is only if you've logged into YouTube. So you can use your Gmail account. You can create a account just for YouTube so that people don't know what your name is. Other places you're using Google, whatever you're comfortable with. Someone from New Hampshire. I almost said it with a New Hampshire accent, but I stopped myself because I think my accent sounds very authentic. But by the face my husband makes, who's from, oh man, I can never remember where he grew up. His family now doesn't live there anymore. They live in another area of New Hampshire. He just looks at me like it's not funny. So I'm assuming that my New Hampshire accent is really terrible. All right. What did I do? I always get out my notes and then I put them somewhere else. And I don't know where they are. All right. Buying bees. Have not put in my order yet, but it's still a little early. If it's winter time where you are and you're not in Australia or the other end side of the world. Gary says it is raining a couple of inches, 50-mile-per-hour winds. Yikes. Still sounds beautiful, that area. We got some snow here actually this around dinner time, but it looks like it stopped. Just a little bit of a dusting, I believe. I don't know if it's supposed to start up again or not. I'm not used to checking the weather yet, which sounds maybe weird, but for the last decade, I didn't check the weather. There was absolutely no need to check the weather unless a hurricane was coming. But even then, it very rarely hit that side of the island. So I still just forget that it's like something to do. Anyway, so there's nukes and there's packages if you're looking to buy bees. I'm going to do both. I'm going to buy probably two nukes, and then one package. If I don't really feel like buying a third beehive, maybe just one nuke and one package. And that's just for the sake of filming it. And it was really hard to find someone that sold packages of bees on the Big Island. Most people just sold nukes. From my experience in Pennsylvania, the people that sold packages were usually buying them, like a ton of them, a truckload of them from Tennessee and Georgia, and then driving them overnight up to the Philly area and distributing them because, the beekeepers in Philly weren't ready to give bees to people and put together a package or a nuke in mid-March. So those beekeepers would go to the southern states where things were already in full swing, pick them up, bring them back up. And on the Big Island, there wasn't any of that. So it was very rare that somebody was selling a package. So I couldn't ever film like buying a package of bees and installing it into a hive. So I just want to buy a package just for the sake of doing that. When I was in Philly, that's how I got started, but I also had 2 top bar hives. So if you're going to have a top bar hive, a long langstroth hive, any style hive where you don't have the typical frame, I have got rid of all the boxes for you guys actually this Friday, and I actually have some beekeeping things. Uh, so we have here a frame and a nuke. Your other option in a package is going to come on these frames. So if you have a beehive that cannot fit one of these frames, you're going to want a package so that you can dump your bees in there. Now, just real quick, some people like the idea of just running medium boxes and not having deep boxes. That box right there, that is a deep, that is the tallest size box you can buy if you are working with a langstroth style beehive. Now, for the sake of keeping your beehive a little bit lighter in weight, you might want to just use all mediums, and then it also just cuts back on the amount of equipment you need because everything's the same size. All your frames are the same size. All your boxes are the same size. It doesn't weigh as much. And so for all those reasons, a lot of people want to just run all medium boxes. And it's a great way to do things. But the only time that this is really going to be a little difficult is when you are buying your bees. You do not want to buy a nuke and have them come on these frames that are like 9 and something inches tall and they not fit into your medium box. You can cut it, but there's going to be bees on it, and so I don't recommend going that route. So the people in the bee club near me, one person mentioned if you want, like that they sell nukes for medium size frames as well as deep frames. I had never seen that before. So, but maybe it's a little bit more popular nowadays to have all medium boxes. And so some people are accounting for that, or maybe they just also like to run medium boxes for their brood. Either way, it might be possible for you to find nukes for your medium boxes, but don't forget to consider that when deciding what kind of beehive you're going to use or who you're going to buy your bees from. If you can't find someone that's selling nukes with medium-sized frames, you're just going to have to buy a package. So yeah, I saw one person is asking about the different kinds of bees, Italian, Russian. So why don't we just talk about that real fast, because probably you guys know a lot about buying bees. And if you have more questions about that, feel free to ask them. You can get your queen painted if you want, which is great starting out. After a few years, try to learn how to spot your queen without the paint up, because it's good practice. If you're splitting your bees, if your bees swarm off and they make their own queen, you're going to have to get used to spotting a queen without a big dot on her back. Um, and I don't know if people still offer clipping the queen's wings. That was something that they asked me about when I bought bees in PA 13 years ago, but I haven't seen it since. Um, but that might be more of like the bigger operations that are selling all those packages of bees or something. I don't recommend getting your queen's wings clipped. But if anyone has any other advice about that topics, any benefit to it that you can think of, it's supposed to keep them from swarming, but she can still like jump out of the hive and then end up on the ground, and then you just have like a ball of bees on the ground. There are just other ways to prevent your bees from swarming than clipping her wings. Anyway, so there's genetics. And that's like a big question, what kind of bees are you going to get? And yeah, Gary mentioned that's a good point. Really just go as local as you can. So I'm going to talk about like some of these things like German versus Russian and buckfast and all of these different kinds of bees. But the most important thing is to buy your bees locally. So if you not to this like those big outfits that will ship you bees, that is some people's only option. And if it is, then it's your only option. But the best thing to do is just buy them locally. I mean, I just moved here. We just moved into this house November 1st from 5,000 miles away. I don't know any other beekeepers. I just Googled the county I live in and the bee association and found one and just joined the club. It's really just as simple as that. If you don't have clubs locally to you, then that's when you're going to have to start calling the clubs in the county surrounding you, your state association, and the commercial apiaries nearby, and asking if they sell bees. But I just joined a few of the chats and talked to some people, and some of the people in the chat sold bees, and just got some recommendations and from local beekeepers, because that's way better than having them. Do not have them mailed to you and put on a truck, because a lot of them will arrive dead. It's the temperature. The um, mail carrier does not know how to transport bees. So if they are going to be putting bees on a truck, they do not know what temperature they need to be in. You have no idea what the temperature is going to be in the post office when it's sitting there overnight before the person puts it in their truck, and how long they're going to be sitting in this truck. They can freeze to death. It could be really hot in there. But most likely they would probably freeze, and then they're going to arrive dead. But the big thing that people seem to want to know about is the stock of a bee. And really, you can Google this, and there's a lot of great information. From Penn State has a really great entomology department, where they talk about bees and beekeeping a lot. And the state bee inspector, actually, or her assistant in Hawaii, went to Penn State. And so you have Italian, German, Carniolan, Buckfast, Caucasian, Russian. On the Big Island, there was Italian and German. Some people said there's Carniolan bees, but they stopped allowing people to ship bees to that state decades ago, well before I arrived there. And so their genetic pool was very, very slim. As far as I was aware, they weren't shipping in like drone semen or anything. So the German bees are pretty easy to notice, because they're really dark in color. They're kind of like dark brown with like a grayish striping. Whereas the Italian bees, they're more like the typical honeybee you're used to seeing. They're yellow with the black stripes. Um, and so the Russian bees are, in general, what people say is best for dealing with varroa mites. Shoot, can someone help me out? What was the name of that very well-known female beekeeper? She was a scientist, and she wrote a lot about bees, and then she became an entomologist, and wrote about beekeeping. She was the one that originally said, like, varroa mites came from this area of the world, and bees have been living with them and dealing with them all this time. Like, why not bring this stock of honeybees to the rest of the world where our honeybees are just dying because of the varroa mite? And so she was really the one that brought over the Russian bees. And their gentleness, they say, is low to moderate, the Russian bees. No Russian jokes being made. I know some very nice Russian people. Spring buildup is okay, but their overwintering ability is supposed to be very good. Their honey processing is good, and they're supposed to be able to deal with varroa mites very well. The Italian bees, their gentleness is a little bit more on the moderate side. Their spring buildup is good. Their overwintering ability is good, but like not great like the Russian bees. And their honey processing is supposedly very, very good. And the farm I worked for, where they just did honey. They had 4,000 hives, give or take 500 at a time, and they pretty much had Italian bees. But the thing is that, I mean, you can look up a little bit more about honeybee genetics and rearing bees and things of that sort. But what it comes down to, it's like it was my grandmother's form. She made all of her own clothes, and that was from her. She's now wearing a bee veil. What it comes down to is that for a lot of these beekeepers, especially if you're buying it from this like small local apiary, they're not artificially inseminating their queens. And so the queen is going out and she's mating with not just one drone, she's mating with a lot of drones. And a lot of these drones might be from the yard, from the mating yard that she's in, but there could be other drones in the area too. And so you can't really, like, at this point, you can't really say, like, these are Russian bees and these are Italian bees. That might be a lot of what's the makeup of the bees, but there's going to be a lot of other stuff in there. So, I mean, especially if the farm is not artificially inseminating their queens, I don't really see how they could say what the genetic makeup is of the bee. But, if they're asking you and they're giving you the option, why not at least like tell them what you'd like? So for a lot of people, if you live in an area where there's a cold climate, you have a decent winter, I would always go for the Russian bees. If you are looking for a calmer bee and lots of honey production and you're not so much concerned about the cold winters, then Italian bees are great. That is primarily what they had in Hawaii. And I mean, if you see my videos, I am in a t-shirt. When I did the tours, I used to wear flip-flops and shorts and a t-shirt. Just a veil was the only protective clothing I had. And there were times when they would get a little cranky, but for the most part, they were pretty docile bees. And that was a combination of Italian, but there was also a decent amount of German traits in there. A lot of bees were the like kind of grayish and black, as well as a lot of the yellow and black bees. Now there's the Carniolan and Buckfast and Caucasian. Um, they say that the Carniolan are very gentle, as well as the Caucasian bees are very gentle. The Carniolan have a really good spring buildup. Their overwintering ability is good, and their honey production is good. So, also a really great option for people if that's what they are interested in. Um, I don't really know when it comes to dealing with varroa mites how good they are. Some people's theory is that the more gentle they are when it comes to a beekeeper handling them, that's also not great for dealing with varroa mites. Other people disagree with that. I do not like to claim to know one way or the other because I am not out there taking like a lot of hives and really just doing a proper study. Uh, Now, there is also this thing called excess swarming. And when it comes to swarming, the Carniolan bees, which seem to be the perfect bee on paper, they do have a swarming tendency of more so over the other traits of bees. Um, the bug-fast bee being the lowest tendency to swarm, and the Carniolan being pretty much the highest. Caucasian bees are known to not be too swarmy either. Okay, so let me break this down for you. I have a little chart here. If you want bees that are gentle, um, Carniolan and Caucasian are the highest on the gentle scale. Um, the Italian is next, and then the German, Buckfast, and Russian are on the lower end when it comes to being gentle. In my experience, the German bees are pretty gentle as well, but maybe there was just enough Italian traits in there that they were all just pretty gentle. For spring buildup, if you want the best spring buildup, you're going to want to go with the Carniolan. Those are the best. Next, you're going to go with Italian. And the German and Buckfast are on the lower end, as well as the Caucasian. If you are concerned about overwintering, they say that the Russian bees and the German bees are the best, which, kind of makes sense because they are from areas with known for colder climate. But the other strains of bees are pretty good as well. And for honey processing, they say that the Italian honeybees are the best. There are other traits, but those are some of the more notable ones that I wanted to bring up with you guys. I would not pay $250, $200 for nukes. Yeah, $200 for a nuke sounds pretty on par for a lot of the United States. That was, I believe, what the one guy in Hive was charging when I was looking to buy some bees earlier this year. I believe he was charging $200 for a nuke. Dave says it's 3 a.m. Hassan wants to know what would be a possible medication for someone stung by a bee. Well, if they're swelling up, you can give them Benadryl to bring down the inflammation. It just makes them a little woozy. Someone told me that a long time ago, they had asked me what to do when her mother was stung by a bee, and I told her to suck it up. But it really depends on what your responses. If it's swelling and it's like getting all puffy, then you can take Benadryl to decrease the inflammation. If it's itchy, then calamine lotion can help. Ice is really great to just distract you, so that you don't scratch it, and then it usually goes away in like a couple days. Jimmy says, I purchased different types of hives and not found a lot of difference. Time will tell. Yeah, honestly, it there can be a difference, but it's a little hard because I would say it would be better to just go to a farm that doesn't treat 4 times a year and is maybe breeding for the qualities that you want. For me, that would be varroa resistance. That's like the ultimate goal, is for your bees to be able to deal with varroa mites on their own. Now, there are ways that bees deal with varroa on their own, and that is a lot of the beekeeper not intervening. Like swarming, or just having a break in the brood cycle. That is a huge way that bees get rid of varroa mites and bring those mite levels down. So a beekeeper could say, yeah, I hardly have varroa mites in my hive, but that might just be because they let their bees swarm constantly. So it can be really hard to know what kind of traits these bees are going to have that you're buying from the beekeeper. The one place I saw the message they were selling bees, they said gentle bees. Now, yeah, it's great if my bees are gentle, but personally, I don't care as much if my bees are gentle. I want them to handle them. I want them to take care of themselves as much as possible. I want them to deal with pests as much as possible without my intervention, and I want them to bring in as much food as possible on their own so that I don't have to feed them so much. Like, I want them to take care of themselves as much as possible. I don't care if they like me or they're nice to me when I open their beehive. Other people, that's more so what they want, and that's not a bad thing, because you want to enjoy beekeeping. If you don't like it and it's not fun and it seems like a chore and there's all these things you have to do that you dread, then you're not going to want to stick with it, and it's going to seem like a chore instead of the best part of the week for you. So it's really hard to find someone that has bees that have those traits that you like. You can inquire and see like what they do for varroa mites and how gentle are their bees, or ask questions about the traits that you're interested in. But a lot of it is just trial and error. Ask around, see what people say, and then just try your best and buy bees from one place one year and then try another place the next year if it doesn't work out, or just get a stock of bees to start. Catch swarms, put out some swarm traps or do cutouts, and just increase your keep splitting hives and just increasing your apiary. It increases your genetics, and then you just you can do it manually, or you can let winter do it, and you can see what's left come springtime. Because like personally, I'm not going to go calling these places that say they're selling nukes and say like, how many times a year do you treat for bees and things like that, because I honestly don't think that they're going to give me a real answer anyway. So I'm going to go with 2 different apiaries, and I'm going to buy 2 nukes from one place, and then I'll buy a package of bees from another, just for the sake of being able to film that package. Oh, my chat just went up. See, one person from Reading, Pennsylvania, which is where I am at here in PA. But if someone was to ask me, like, when buying bees, what kind of bee I would like, I would go with Russian probably. And see if the talk about their traits dealing better with varroa mites is true or not, because that's my top concern is my bees handling the varroa mites with the least intervention from me possible. Cheryl says, I have 6 waxed hives. They came with nails. They're Hoover hives and 2 honeykeepers. Yeah, the Hoover hives mine came with screws. Here's the bag. So I don't know if there is a task I hate more than assembling frames. I just hate it so much. I hate putting frames together. I came with a bunch of nails for the frames. I bought nails from Man Lake a long time ago, years and at least over 6 years ago from Man Lake, and it said it was for frames, but they were smaller than this, and they were so small, they were total, I don't know if the morals occurs on here. I ended up just saving them, and I would use them to hang like pictures on the wall and stuff. So they came with these screws. I would say that if you're going to use boxes that have finger joints or dovetail joints, you would want to use a nail. I would be afraid that the screws would. I guess you could just. Oh wait, no, they came with pre-drilled holes. The Hoover hive that I have, they had a pre-drilled hole, and then they came with these screws, which is the way I've always assembled my bee boxes, but I made my own boxes, and so I didn't have dovetail or finger joints. I had a rabbit joint because I didn't have a full-size table saw because I was living in a shack. Formerly, the queen breeding shack of Big Island Queens was the studio apartment I was living in. And so I couldn't have a full-size table saw. The little mini saw I had, mini table saw thing. So I did rabbit joints, which did pretty well because I couldn't put a dado blade in the table saw. And those boxes actually lasted a really long time and lasted longer than the boxes that I got from Daydant that were finger joints. Just saying, if you're looking to build boxes, I don't really think that joint is better. And the reason why is because it really just depends on how you pry your boxes apart when you're taking apart your hive to inspect it. But if you're taking your hive tool and putting it in the corner of the box and prying it up, because that's the easiest place to really jam that hive tool in there. If your bees are really propolis, they are a little inclined to really fill up that hive with propolis. You put it there, it just like that joint's kind of weak with those little finger pieces. And you can really just destroy your boxes pretty fast. But that rabbit joint that I did was fine with putting my hive tool there where the joint was. But yeah, like I mentioned earlier, the hives I got from Beaver were also wax coated. That's the hive, from that video I made. They did not come with any screws or nails for the box, and even in the instructions, they just talk about hammering it together with a mallet, but they don't mention anything about nailing or screwing the box together. I don't know if they just forgot, or they think that once it is assembled, since it's beeswax coated, it's unnecessary. Oddly enough, those Hoover hives from Galena Farms, you really didn't need any screws or nails because that box was so hard to get together. There was like unnecessary. There wasn't even any point to putting glue on it because the glue just all squirted out. Those joints were so tight. It was insane. Both me and my husband were just taking turns like trying to get this thing. We ended up like using a heat gun to melt the wax a little bit just to get those pieces together. Prospecting with Disabilities says, how long do I have to wait after adding a second deep to add my supers? It's really not a length of time. It's once your deep is mostly full, you're looking at like 70%. Once there's not a lot of space left for them to build, then you start to add more, another box on top. Or if you're planning on going on vacation, add that box on a little bit early, so that more space is always better than not enough space when it comes to that springtime growth. Somebody from Kennett Square, Pennsylvania. We almost bought a house out in Kennett Square. um, Beautiful, like huge amount of acreage. It was a really beautiful yard, but house was a little too small. Um, Jimmy Painter says, "Have you purchased queens? I heard called mutts, local queens from nature." I think every queen is a mutt. The the last time I bought queens, it was in Kona, and I just went to the queen breeder that I knew that would sell them. It's kind of hard to buy queens there because it's all commercial. It's Kona, the Kona is like the queen breeding capital of the world. So when you live in the home of queen breeding, it's actually hard to buy queens because everybody wants to run this big operation where they're selling them for, I don't know how much they sell them, like $30 to $50 a piece, and they're shipping out tens of thousands of them to the beekeepers in Canada and the US. And so no one wants to sell like 5 queens to a beekeeper, much less like a queen or two. It's really hard to find queens. Here it is a lot easier. I will take buying mutts, you can call them, over buying some kind of purebred bee, because I would rather just buy from a local beekeeper. That must mean that they have bees, that their bees are overwintering, their bees are handling the climate, they're handling the stresses here, and they're surviving. And then they're selling bees come springtime, and they have an excess that they can sell bees. And I would take that mutt that has, genetics that I want. It doesn't necessarily mean that the bees that I get are going to have those genetics. And that's the hard part about breeding bees, is that you have the queen's genetics, but you also have the male's genetics in this mix. And it's so you can't just say, oh, this hive did really well with rural mites, so therefore I'm just going to breed it 20 times and now I'm going to have 21 hives that deal with rural mites really well. That's not how it works, because those queens that you're making aren't just 100% their mother. So anyway, I just lost my train of thought. I would rather just buy bees locally and hope for the best, that at least I'm buying them from this local climate, than buying them from a bigger commercial operation that's claiming to sell this purebred bee or closer to it, that has those specific traits that you read about online that you really want. Because those commercial operations, they treat bees like a commodity. So for one, I don't really want to support all of those big commercial operations. That's, other people can, they're in business for those other people. They're not in business to sell to these local hobby beekeepers. But when their bees don't survive the winter, they just buy more. So the place I worked for, they sold honey, and they had, thousands of hives. And when their hive swarmed, they just got queens. And the operation across the street sold queens, and they would have a box of queens that they would bring out with them. And if the hive needed a queen, they just popped one in and they went on their way. And if a commercial apiary here in the US, if they lose all their bees because of, say, rural mites or whatever happens, they just buy 20,000 more queens, and they just buy 20,000 more packages or more hives. So you, as the beekeeper purchasing from them, really don't know how successful these people are, because they just always have bees. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a successful beekeeper in what you deem successful. So for me, success is having healthy bees, not just having 4,000 bees or 20,000 bees, or having a business that supports and that's bringing in so much income. It's having these healthy bees. And if I go to this beekeeper down the road, I'd rather buy bees from them, knowing that they're 70% of their hives are surviving, as opposed to this commercial apiary where they could have, like, 70% hive loss every year, and you would never know because they just buy more. And that's just what those commercial places do. There's a lot of them that just, once they're done with the pollination services for the year, their bees die, and then they buy new ones for February for the almond orchards. And that's just, they just buy new ones every year. So working for the Crows commercial, those big commercial outfits, can be very disheartening and very sad. And it's really just not where you want to go to have healthy bees. Yeah, I would take a mutt any day over those specific kinds of genetics. I have had students buy a queen or bees with, like, from places that say that it's like these specific genetics, a specific, like a carniolan bee or something, and they've had like really great results. But that really is going to vary depending on who you're purchasing from. Harvey says mail carriers aren't supposed to deliver them. It's a safety hazard. Some will anyway. I have to pick mine up at the office. Good to know. I know that some places will deliver, and yeah, I think that's where it happens. And some mail carriers refuse to deliver even if their office lets them. And he says, what's everybody paying for Nukes this season? I feel like I ripped off. I was selling Nukes for 200, I think, but if you took my class, I think there was a discount. Maybe it was like 150 or something. And that was, 5 years ago, 4 years ago. I think it's still about 200 on the Big Island. I did not look to see what those people were selling those Nukes for, though. Good question. Gary says packages. I lost it. Packages are 3 pounds. I can never remember. I always get confused if it's 3 pounds or 5 pounds. It's been so long. It's not supposed to have adult bees. I'm curious. I wonder how I guess it's just the frames that they're shaking to get the bees off of. Danny says price of Nukes have gone up a little bit this year. Prospecting with Disability says $230 to $250 in his area. Dave Harvey says in Ukraine the laws are very lax on hives but very strict on bee breeds, even with the war. When I sold bees, I sold them in a waxed Nuke box. I got them, they were like $10 a piece. I bought them in bulk from Man Lake. And I would tell people, I don't know if other places would be okay with this, but I would tell them, if you want to bring your own equipment, we can transfer the bees into your hive and strap it up and take it out. And I'll leave my box here and I'll take $10 off of the cost. I would not take $10 back if they returned the box, because I didn't want to deal with it. My bees weren't at my home, so they wouldn't have been like taking it to my house. And I didn't want to. It was kind of a pain to coordinate them dropping it off. But I guess in Hawaii, it's like year round, so it wasn't like a big day where I was selling, like 100 nukes. It was more just like this steady flow of nukes that I was selling throughout the year. Mm. Robert says a nuke is 270 in his area. That's such a funny number. In northern state with bad winters was told an overwintered local queen is more important than a modern hybrid queen with BSH genetics. Those come from Florida. Yeah, I mean, the queen breeders are going to be in the warm climates. It's Hawaii. So Kona is so good for queen breeding because it is year round and it's low wind. It's very little rain. It's not too hot. It's not too cold. It is like the perfect climate for humans and queen bees. it's it. I would always talk to my family and they would either be complaining it was too hot or too cold. It was so rare that they would be like, it's nice out. And every single day it would be like 82. um, it's just really nice. Very like just calm in Kona, especially with the low wind. There's no monsoon season. There's no real rainy season. It never gets really hot, and the low wind makes it really great for those queen bees when they're out on their mating flight. And like all these other warm weather states, uh, it's great for queen breeding business, but it's not good for the people in the colder climates. I would take a beehive from any local place over a bee from Hawaii. I mean, some people have told me that they've bought from them and they've gone great. And it's not like those bees are bad. It's just like why bother going so far away if you don't have to. Bennett says he got 2 nukes for 250. 2 nukes for 250, like 125 a nuke, or 250. I'm guessing it's 250 for 2 nukes. That's a really good price. Oh, and the Cookie Monster asked the same question. Oh, 250 each. Okay. That seems to be about the going price. And he says, what's a good way to find used equipment for a good price? Well, the Chester County Bee Association I'm a member of, they have this like community board people post to. And I've seen tons of postings in the last few months, people getting rid of their old equipment. So if you, that's really the best place. This association is like the best association I've seen. I mean, I've only belonged to 3. This is the 3rd, but they really like have like everything a beekeeper could need as a hobbyist in this group. So people just are always posting things. Before I got it from Craigslist, I guess now it's Facebook Marketplace. That's where I sold my stuff. Also on the Facebook Hawaii Bee page, I sold things. So if there's a local Facebook group, you might be able to see people selling things. But for the most part, it was just on Facebook Marketplace. And yeah, there's also just make sure you're not getting any kind of, I don't know, tainted equipment that could get your bees sick or anything. But that's where a bee association, if they have a community board, that's really the best way. And if they don't, you can always ask if you can send out like an email or something asking around if people have equipment they're looking to get rid of. Harvey wants to know what the meanest strain of bee I've ever tried to work. I really haven't met many mean bees. Well, I did, but it was only when this one yard I had was they were building a house next to it. And those bees were really angry for like the next 6 months. But yeah, in Hawaii, they stopped allowing people to ship bees in decades ago. So it's really just the Italian and German bees that are out there. They once were concerned that a swarm of bees that was in a container on Oahu, it arrived via container. It was like in the container when they opened it up at the port on Oahu, was Africanized bees, but then they said it wasn't. I don't know if they would have admitted it was Africanized bees or how they would have been able to tell, but I never came across it in Hawaii, so we'll see. We'll see in PA how it does. Harvey says used equipment scares me. I'd end up with someone's nosema. I know that the nosema can be in the wax. I was thinking about that. I feel like there is a way to wash your equipment, wash the wood so that you don't spread nosema via the wood. I'm not even sure if it can be spread. It is just like these spores. I had read about it a while ago. I see a while ago, but I think it was less than like a month ago. Um, and I believe you cannot spread nosema with wood equipment, but you'd have to double check me. I want to say that it was on Randy Oliver's website at Scientific Beekeeping when he was talking about nosema in one of his articles that he mentions it. Randall says, can you describe what comes in a bag of bees? How many? Well, Gary has a good explanation earlier. You have the package of bees, which is 3 pounds, roughly 10 to 12,000 bees. You're going to have one mated young queen bee. And sorry, I thought this was a cat on the chair next to me, but my daughter had put this really large horse on next to me when I wasn't paying attention. So the package is a screened in box and it has about 3 pounds of bees. You're not going to have any males, just the females. And there's going to be a can with some syrup in the center, and there's going to be a queen. She's going to be in a cage, and a bunch of 10, 12,000 young adult worker bees in this package. Or you can buy a nuke, and that is, I'm going to grab for you this box. All right, now this is not a nuke box, but this looks really similar. I had to throw away my nuke boxes when we moved. We just got a cat from the SPCA, and he came in a very similar box to what a nuke would come in. Pretty much a nuke holds 5 of these frames. So, you open up the box, and it really just holds. So this is a little slightly smaller than what the actual box would be. And it holds 5 of these frames. It has a lid that is just like this wooden lid behind me, but wax cardboard. Some people will make their own nuke boxes and it'll be made out of wood, or you might get them in that wax box, and it's really just 3 to 5. I always sold 5 frames. I wouldn't buy a 3-frame nuke. I would go with the 5 frames. It's usually with 3 frames of bees, 3 frames of brood drawn out and various stages, and you'll have an adult queen that's mated, that's walking around laying already, and then you'll have 2 frames that are food, a honey pollen mixture. And that is really the best way to get started. Your bees, it is the easiest way also. There's a lot less problems that can come up because you literally give you the box and you take it home. Okay, so they give you this box, and what you're going to want to bring is I would bring a ratchet strap with you. If you don't have one, you can bring duct tape if you like. And then I like to bring a mosquito net. See. Of all the things I packed up from Hawaii and brought with me when we only had a 5 foot by 6 foot pod, I brought this dirty old mosquito net for some reason. But here it is for whatever reason. Anyway, I do have a video on my YouTube channel. It is called Your First Month as a Beekeeper. And when you go to the channel, it might be the first video that pops up. And so when you get your box, even if you get a package, if you get the package and there's a bunch of bees like on the outside of the package, or you're concerned that it might open up, there's like little cracks or something, especially if you're putting it into your car, you don't have a truck, it's good to have a mosquito net, and you would just wrap the net around the box or package. If you're getting a waxed Nuke box, there's usually just like ventilation holes that are too small for a bee to get out. This is, the cat box. So these holes are bigger. But if you are bringing your own equipment or something and you want to make sure that the bees have ventilation, but you don't want them to get out, you could always just leave an entrance open and then put this mosquito net around it. If you need to move bees at any point and you want to make sure they don't die and they have ventilation, just wrap a mosquito net around it and leave the entrance open. Don't close everything up and let them, suffocate. So when you buy your Nuke, you can always just wrap it with this mosquito net before you put it into your car. If it's all closed up, then that's not a problem. There's just small ventilation holes. But if you have bees on the outside, then you can always just wrap the mosquito net around it. And so this box is going to have 3 to 5 frames of adult bees walking around doing their thing. You bring it back home and you just have to take the lid off, pick up the frames and put them into the beehive. Put empty frames on either side of it and close it up and walk away. It could be lightly raining out. It doesn't have to be great weather. You can still do it as long as it's not too cold. If it's cold or it's really windy or raining, then you can always just stick the box like next to the beehive where you're going to put the bees and do it another time. And it's not a big deal. If it's a wax box, I usually put like a piece of plywood or something over it, like just sitting on top, or like a pop-up tent, or maybe you put it in your carport or a shed with the door open or something, just so that it's covered from the rain if it's supposed to rain or snow or something, because this is still just paper. Just a way to keep it protected on top. And then install them the next day or the day after that. The bees can be in one of these boxes for at least a week. It's more so just a concern that the box is going to start to fall apart if it's been out in the elements for too long. But you don't want them in there for weeks because they're going to outgrow this box really fast. They need room to grow, and there's no room to grow. It's totally full, hopefully. If it's not totally full, then you didn't get your money's worth. You want this to be bursting with bees. You get a package, you have to open it up, and you have to put the bees in the box, you have to put the cage in there, and then you have to release your queen, or at the very least check to see if the queen got out of the cage. There's can be issues with the queen not being able to get out, or the queen being let out too soon and the bee is killing her, or if it's not good weather, then you have to bring it inside. And if there's not enough sugar and syrup in the can anymore, because this package was probably trucked all through the night and the bees have been feeding off of the syrup for a while already. So there's just more things that can come up. And it's not the end of the world. There are things you can do about it. You can always spray them with syrup if you need to. and get a new queen if you need to and all those things. But the nuke is a lot easier and usually twice as expensive. And also, the bees will grow a lot faster. They already have honey. They already have accepted their queen. They already have baby bees that are going to be hatching soon. They already have honeycomb. With a package, they are in an empty cavern and they have to just like start from scratch. And it'll take longer. Dave says that Russian bees seem to be far more aggressive the last 2 years, but their sting isn't bad, like a mild ant bite. Interesting. I'm gonna have to get some Russian bees just to see. Would you recommend treating nukes shortly after you get them? No, I wouldn't. You can, but I wouldn't recommend it. I will, like whoever I buy my nukes from, I will ask them if they treated and if this it and if they did when. And that's what I tell everybody when they ask me if they should be treating and when in the springtime. You just ask. Like, if they were treated, there is no reason why you should have to. You do not want to do a mite test so early and potentially kill bees. And if you're new to beekeeping, you don't want to potentially kill your queen because you're not used to spotting her yet. So it's a little early to be able to detect whether you have a hive varroa mite level and need to treat. So the question is, should you just treat so that you don't have to worry about high varroa mite levels come summertime when there's lots of honey coming in and you don't want to taint it with these chemicals. So yeah, just ask the police like if they treated so that you know if you need to or not. And so this is the thing, even if they didn't treat and you want to, so you don't have to deal with high varroa mite levels come the summertime, you don't have to when you first get the package. You get this nuke, it's like 5 frames, right? You're going to put it into a box that holds 10 frames. And then once that box is full, you're going to put in on another 10 frame deep box, probably. That is 15 frames that your bees have to draw out comb and fill up before they're going into a honey super. You have ample time to put in a treatment before that honey super is going onto your beehive. And so, yeah, that second deep box, there's going to be lots of honey in there, and that could be honey that you want to harvest, but there's going to be brood in that box as well, unless you're doing, other methods of beekeeping where you don't have brood in that box. But assuming you're not, that's a lot of frames. It's going to take a while. It is not going to be like immediate that you are going to worry that the bees are filling in honey supers. So it's really just not something that you need to do right away. Treatments do have to be in the hive for 6 weeks, so you need to account for that. But really, more so something to be concerned about is that your bees aren't filling up your 2 brood boxes. That would more so be something I'd be worried about than treating too late and you being ready to put honey supers on. All right, it's 9:03, so I'm going to head out in a few minutes. I just wanted to check out some of your questions before I go. Bobby Cook says, hi from West Virginia. This will be my first year beekeeping. I bought a new hive that's 2 deeps and 1 super. Do I need another super? Wow, that's a lot. Yeah, All of the beehives, those starter beehives that I was given, are 2 deeps and 1 super that they gave me, and I plan on buying 1 additional super, which is just good to have on hand in case you need it. You might not need it, but if those 2 deeps and 1 super are full, or maybe they're not, this is just like empty equipment you're buying. Either way, it's good to have another super. You're not going to need 2 deeps and 2 supers for every single beehive. Most likely, but unless you're in Hawaii, some of those beekeepers, their hives got really tall. But not every hive is going to be a super hive and bring in lots of honey, but some hopefully will, and you're going to want 2 supers for those bees, especially if you're in. I mean, I guess it depends if you're in the mountains or not, but you probably have a shorter winter, and so you might have a little bit longer honey season. I would definitely have a couple supers, extra supers on hand for your hives. Have I ever tried catching a swarm? Yes, I have. Many times. They have gone a variety of directions. I have never successfully caught a swarm where I wanted them to go. I have set up a lot of swarm traps. Only once did I catch a swarm where I had beekeeping equipment. They went into a stack of old bead boxes on the side of a barn, on a stack that was almost the height of the barn. And it was like in the middle. It was, no, I'm going to say we had to get up on a ladder to get to the bees. So it was like probably about 8 feet off the ground that the swarm moved into. And there was boxes on top of it. And I have never successfully caught a swarm aside from that, and it's really just because of the location. You really just need to be where there are hives that are going to be swarming, and I had always just put them around our property, which was not really a great place for bees, so I wasn't never really expected to catch much. But other people have had great luck with like swarm lures and stuff. Old beekeeping equipment is usually enough to catch swarms if you're in an area where you have other beekeepers or wild hives. Sharon says, should I requeen my hive if after 12 months the guard bees pursue me if I go to my clothesline, or will this pass? I mean, if they're still doing it 12 months later, then it's not going to pass. It sounds like they're pretty aggressive, and it's probably the genetics. Sometimes it can be a sign that they're sick. If you don't monitor varroa mite levels, they could have a lot of viruses, and that can sometimes cause bees to be more aggressive. But if they are that aggressive for an extended period of time, it's probably just the way that they are. I would definitely requeen if they are preventing you from hanging your clothes up, because that's, now either that or move on somewhere else. If it doesn't bother you when you're keeping them and you just want to be able to use your backyard, then you can put them somewhere else. But if they are Africanized bees, though, it can be really tricky to requeen. I've been told by a beekeeper in Texas who works with Africanized bees. Let's see. Uh-oh, I lost it again. Danny says he catches 5 or 6 a year, so you should ask Danny what he does to catch swarms. I will have to say, there are just some things I have not been successful at, and swarm catching is definitely one of them. Hi from Germany. Hello. I saw one video that shows using fishing line to brace the wax foundation. Is that okay to use? Probably. I don't see why not. I don't think the bees would chew through it or anything. I I have never tried wax foundation before. So, if anyone else is familiar with putting wax foundation in their frames, Randall is asking about that. Harvey says every time I think about how much easier it must be to overwinter in Florida, I remember small hive beetles. It's really not the small hive beetles, it's the varroa mites. It's when you don't have a frost, your varroa mite levels are really, really high. Like in Hawaii, the varroa mite levels are through the roof, and small hive beetle and wax moth. But the small hive beetle is very opportunistic and they will take advantage of weak hives. And the weakness comes from the varroa mites and all of the diseases that they spread when they bounce from hive to hive. Troop 792 says, what one thing should a new beekeeper that started with a package do this winter to help the one hive? Um, the one thing to do to help your, well, if you're in the winter time and you have one package, one beehive, then I mean, there's really not much to do now. Like, everything needs to be done in the warmer months. But if you like are going to be starting in the springtime with your package, there's really just I always say to people to not make this too complicated when you're first getting started. My best advice is to make your goal to keep these bees alive. When you have just one package, is tricky. It doesn't matter if you do everything right. You could give this package of bees to someone that's been doing it for decades. You could give it to me. You could give it to someone that, has overwintered every single hive they've ever bought every single year that they've had them. It's just there are sometimes things that come up that are out of your control. This is nature. It's not perfect. And so you can't do everything perfectly and still have it work out for you. But if there is one thing that you should do to help these bees survive, it is to keep them healthy. And the number one way to keep them healthy is to keep their varroa mite levels low. That can be a variety of ways. It can be natural methods like letting them swarm, breaking brood cycles. It can be putting treatments in, organic and inorganic. But a hive with a lot of varroa mite levels will not survive the winter. And they won't survive in a warm climate, and they won't survive in a cold climate. In a warm climate, the small hive beetles will destroy them. And in a cold climate, they won't properly be able to cluster up and keep them and their queen warm. Either way, they're all going to die. The varroa mites, they spread diseases around. The other thing, if I was going to say too, is to get them in a really great location. You can be a terrible beekeeper. You can never open up your beehive once all year, and your bees could survive the entire year, all through the winter, and be there in the spring. If they are in a really great location. If they're in a great location, what's going to happen is they are going to bring in lots of food. They're going to build lots of comb. They are going to expand and explode, and they are going to swarm off, and they're going to bounce back because there's going to be lots of food and lots of babies. And then since there's lots of food, they're not going to be competing with other hives. They're not going to have to deal with robbing. There's not going to be a ton of varroa mites because there's not going to be all this robbing, which is going to bring on all these other bees from other hives. And then they're going to be able to survive the winter and be there in the spring. Now, there still could be other things that happen, but in a really great location where they are not struggling to find food, they are not dealing with all these other bees where they're like all competing for the same resources, they will do so well with very little from you. And the problem is that bees need help from humans so much when we have are putting them in these areas where they're just not thriving and they cannot do it alone. And so then we have to step in and we have to feed them and we have to, just share resources from other hives, and we have to help them deal with all of the varroa mites, and we have to put these screens on and decrease the entrance because now there's all this robbing. And a lot of this is because they're all just competing for these tiny little resources that they have in the area. So if you keep an eye on their varroa mite levels and keep them low and don't let them get out of control, and you have them in a spot where there's a lot of resources for them, then your bees will thrive. Let's see. At Man Lake, a hybrid queen is $68. Yikes. $35 in Pennsylvania. If using medium supers to save my back, how many to overwinter in Bucks County, Pennsylvania? 3 or 4? I guess 3. I don't know. I would say 4 would be a little excessive. So you're using all mediums and no deeps. Do you have 4 supers of honey? Because if you don't have that much, then it's really not a question. But I would say that probably 3 would be sufficient. Let's see. Jimmy says, the Beaver hive I purchased, I used glue and pre-drilled and purchased 1-inch and 5/8 screws. Purchased all my hives new, and because of health going mainly 8 frame due to weight. 1 and 5/8 inch screws is what he said he used. Do you mind? They didn't come with any screws or nails for the boxes. I thought it was really odd. So they came with nails for the frames. Gary says, when building langstroth wood boxes and frames, I use glue, galvanized nails, framing square for good 90 degree to help joints. Yeah, that is very important, the galvanized nails. I don't know. I guess it's funny. But I'm pretty sure this is from the Hoover hives that have these screws for them. Randall says, newbie, I just built a medium box for 2 hives. Getting ready to begin the frames and using wax foundation. Any tricks to manage building 80 frames? I started using a nail gun. Real big game changer. I really hate nailing those frames together. You still have to glue them. Don't skimp out on the gluing part. They won't stay together. But nail gun works really well and really fast. Highly recommend. Looking for a foundation from real wax, not synthetic. Gosh, I have no idea. I do know some people, I just know one place, they make their own beeswax foundation, but they use it for their own apiary. They don't sell it. They sell honey. I don't know. That is one thing that I'm curious about. All these places, I thought that they said that it was beeswax sheets with the hexagon imprint, like the ones from Man Lake and stuff, but they're all white, which I thought was really odd because who has white beeswax? Like, how are they cleaning this wax to make it white? Gary says, what kind of hardware do you use for boxes, frames, bottom boards, lids, foundation stands, kinds of nails, staples, screws, glue? I did have one client staple my frames together. That did not go well, though. There are longer staples. I don't know if that would have worked better. I don't know what kind of nails, like what length they were, but I use my husband's nail gun, and works really well. Definitely use wood glue on the frames and the boxes. I have always had my beehives on pallets. If you've seen my videos, they're just on pallets, but for my backyard, I was going to do cinder blocks, probably with some 2x4s in them, and have them in a row lined up in the back. I'm not sure why. Other than pallets just take up a lot of space, and I was looking for more of a horizontal long thing than having 4 beehives. I wanted the hives facing all out in the same direction, as opposed to having them on a pallet, then they're all in different directions. I guess it just depends on what shape your apiary is going to be in. And yeah, I have these boxes that they gave me are beeswax dipped, I guess. I don't know. Beeswax coated. One person left a very great comment on the Beaver video I made about how some beekeepers will dip their equipment, but that's different than this beeswax coating. They dip it, and that's to really just like seal out any moisture and stuff, and makes the wood last a lot longer. And so that's what the farm I used to work for did. You wouldn't even be able to tell that they were beeswax dipped, and then they would paint them after they were assembled. And that is one easy way to paint your boxes, though, is after you assemble them, put them in a big stack and get a roller and just like roll them, and you'll be done all of them really, really fast. Unless you want to make them all fancy and all different colors, then you're going to have to spend a little bit longer. I don't really like that beeswax coating on the outside, though. I would much rather paint them, but I don't think I can paint them now that they're coated in beeswax unless I was to scrape it. It's just like the Beaver Hive, the beeswax coating is on the skimpy side. It doesn't seem like it's going to last very long. I'll have to hold a conversation with my live-in carpenter, aka my husband, and see what he has to say about it. If anyone else has any tips on what to do with this beeswax coated equipment, because I don't really think it's going to last with just that beeswax coating. I don't know, could be wrong. Okay, I gotta go because it's 9:22. I gotta go to bed. Thank you everybody for logging in. Nice to see everyone. Thank you, Richard, for gifting some Beekeeping Made Simple memberships to people that are members. So that's not different than subscribing, but if you like become a member, I think it's like $2.50 a month or something. Or if you take my online class, I go live again on the 3rd Tuesday of the month. And that's a much smaller group of people because it's just members of the channel and people in the course. So if you are, then when you are on my beekeeping channel, there's different links. One says live, one says something. One says community, and if you click the community board, that's where it'll have posts from me, and it'll have a link because it's a private thing. Or if you are in the course, then you will get emailed directly from me with a link to the live post. so that just, it's not just for anybody on YouTube to pop in. You need to click the link in order to be able to access the live. Thanks for everyone who commented and asked questions and joined. Feel free to continue to leave comments or to check back in the video and answer people's comments. I really appreciate other people posting their experiences. Gary left a few comments about documentaries. He said the pollinators was very relevant to him as a sideliner. I keep meaning to watch Honeyland. I tried to watch it a couple days ago, and it just was asking me to log in to pay for it, and I couldn't remember my login because everything's saved. I'm like, anyway, I didn't. But yeah, it's gotten all these awards. I'm afraid it's going to make me really depressed because it sounds like a really sad story. But I haven't watched it yet. I did watch that movie, The Beekeeper, the one with the guy, that like action movie where the guy just like kills a bunch of people and blows things up. I actually thought that was pretty entertaining. It was free on Netflix, I believe. And it was also funny because the other character in it, his name was Garnet, and that was the name of my boss at the bee farm I worked for. So he was a beekeeper, not someone trying to kill a beekeeper. And so I'm going to try to go live the first Friday of the month every month, third Tuesday, also at 8 p.m. for members and people in my class. Don't forget, check out the community section for the link or an email if you're in my class. Hopefully for next month, you will see I have plans to paint a mural on this wall behind me because it's just an office, I guess. It's pretty boring. I just have a filing cabinet, some beekeeping equipment, and that stuff's going to have bees in it a little bit. So I have plans to paint the gigantic, like the whole wall mural of some flowers and bees. And at least half of it, hopefully, will be done by next month. Things happen pretty slowly when you have a 3-year-old screaming at you that she can't walk or she doesn't want to walk. And a 5-year-old that thinks he knows everything. But hope you guys have a great weekend and stay warm if you are somewhere where it's snowing like I am. Bye, everybody.